Hello again. In this visualization, we're going to map the world in terms of international trade. We'll start by looking at the largest countries engaging in world trade, both exports and imports, and we'll also look separately at merchandise trade, which is trade in goods, and trade in services. We'll then pause at the main inter-regional flows, and finally we'll map the world in terms of trade dependence of individual countries. Remember, you can always pause the visualization at any time and look at the information in more detail. Let's start by looking at this bar chart of world merchandise exports. I've taken the top 30 countries because beyond that we're dealing with small percentages, below 1%. However, all the information used in preparing these charts are in the database. The immediate striking point in the chart is the position of China as the world's leading exporter, and more to the point, although you can't see it, the world's largest exporter of manufactured goods. As you slide down the list, we pass the larger industrial countries, interlaced with energy exporters, Russia, Saudi Arabia, and the United Arab Emirates. And then, increasingly after Mexico, some of the larger developing economies begin to appear. Note, however, that Hong Kong and Singapore own their high position largely to the proportion of re-exports in their totals. If we turn now to merchandise imports, we find the United States in the leading position, followed by China, and then the world's industrial countries. Again, Hong Kong and Singapore are high on the rankings because of re-exports. The totals differ slightly, partly because import figures also include freight costs, and partly because of timing. Goods sometimes leave ports long before arriving at their destinations. The world market for commercial services is much smaller than that for merchandise trade. Here, the export trade is dominated by the United States, the UK, Germany and France, which together account for over 30% of the market. Only then do we get China and India, and after that the list tends to be dominated by the developed countries until we reach the 25th place, where we get Thailand and Turkey, Brazil and Poland. If we turn to imports, it's interesting that the largest exporters of international services are also their largest international consumers. Now we come to an interesting map of the direction of world trade, albeit for 2011. It was prepared by the WTO and it shows inter-regional trade. But be very careful, it omits intra-regional trade. That's trade between countries within a region. For example, the large trade flows within Europe and within the European Union are missing, and so too are the large trade flows in Asia. So what you see in the map covers slightly less than 50% of the total of world trade flows. But it's still interesting. The map shows the dominance of Asia-Europe and Asia-North America trade flows in both directions, and the energy dependence of Asia on the Middle East. Now, in the next set of maps, we've got data for 141 larger countries. We're going to exclude Hong Kong and Singapore because of the large element of re-exports in their data. That leaves us with 139 countries. So all the deciles except the last are going to be 14 each. This map shows the missing countries. Okay, now let's look at the importance of trade in individual economies. What we've done is we've added the exports and imports together and expressed the total as a percentage of GDP. Note, though, that there's an element of double counting. So, because of this, we add both values, and they can be very, very high. Even after eliminating Hong Kong and Singapore, the trade dependence can reach over 180% of GDP. As we scroll through the decile maps, there's not a great deal that emerges by way of a pattern, either in terms of regions or in terms of development levels. So what I'm going to do is to just highlight the appearance of the 30 big merchandise exports that we saw at the beginning of the visualization. In the first decile, we get the Netherlands, Belgium, the United Arab Emirates and Malaysia. The second decile, we actually get Korea. In the third decile, we get none. In the fourth decile, we find Germany and Saudi Arabia. And by the fifth, the halfway mark, we can add Switzerland, Sweden and Mexico. So where are the rest? Well, they're not in the sixth. The 7th only unearths Norway. The 8th decile, with the dependency now dropping below 50%, we find in order Italy, France, Spain, China, and the United Kingdom. The 9th decile gives us Indonesia, Russia, and India. And it's only in the last decile that we discover Australia, Japan, the United States, and Brazil. Well, I hope you've enjoyed our map of world trade, and I'll hope you'll explore the database to see the countries that interest you and to see where they might appear.